This is Chapter 5, and it's all about unemployment compensation taxes. And you'll notice when I actually move to the covering the learning objectives, I turn this webcam off so that you don't have to sit there and look at my face the whole time. Some people might like seeing me talk, but I think it's distracting. So that's why at the beginning of every chapter, I tune in, I let you see my face, I say hello, and then I turn the camera off. And all you're left with is my voice and the pictures. So to start with, we're going to cover the Federal Unemployment Tax Act, known as FUTA. It's passed as part of the Social Security Act of 1935, so it's been around a lot, but you can bet that there's been a lot of changes. This is a federal law that imposes a tax on employers. So this is not withheld from the employee. It's out of the employer's pocket. And it's required for the administration of federal and state unemployment insurance programs. So the money that is paid in for federal unemployment doesn't go to cover unemployment benefits. That comes from the state unemployment. The FUTA is just for the administrative costs. SUTA stands for the State Unemployment Tax Act. And there are different laws in each state, but all states have a SUTA, an Unemployment Tax Act. And the funds that employers pay in are then used to pay the benefits out to the employees and also administer the program at the individual state level, because it costs money at the state level as well. So, at the time of this recording, which is in 2013, there's some of the state insurance programs are really being stretched very thin because a lot of people are on unemployment. There's been a lot of people let go. So who's covered under federal unemployment? And so now we're talking about employers. Employers are liable for this tax if they pay $1,500 or more of wages in any quarter in the current or prior year. And that's not a whole lot of wages. If they employ one or more persons on even just one day in each of the 20 weeks in the current or the prior year. And there's some special rules for agricultural and household employers that are mentioned in the book, the text. So if you owe FUTA for any quarter or any period of time, then you are liable for the entire year. Now employees include part-time, meaning the ones that you have to pay FUTA on, part-time, temps, regular workers, workers on vacation, sick leave, agricultural employees, there's some special rules about that, household employees. Basically you have to pay FUTA tax on all of these employees. The general rule is everybody is considered an employee. That's what the EE stands for, if you haven't figured it out so far in these slides. Instead of writing out employee and employer, the only difference in the two words is the ending, so they just put EE to mean employee. So everyone is considered an employee if a common law relationship exists. And this also specifically includes drivers who distribute food or beverages or deliver laundry, traveling salespeople in certain situations. There are some specific exemptions or exceptions, meaning employers don't pay FUTA on partners, and that's because partners aren't considered employees. They get a salary allowance often, but they're not considered employees. Directors, independent contractors, and by the way, a lot of times that's one of the reasons why companies want to call independent contractor or want to call employees independent contractors, because they don't have to pay FUTA or SUTA on them, and they don't also have to pay Social Security or the health insurance. So that's why there's been a lot of abuse. You don't have to pay FUTA on home workers, full-time life insurance salespeople, children under 21 who are working for their parents, governmental employees, and there's there's even more that are exceptions that are listed in your text. So who's covered under SUTA? Well, employees are generally covered under state unemployment if they're covered under FUTA, unless employers specifically excluded. And the same, the employers that don't have to pay federal unemployment generally are also excluded under state laws for SUTA. A lot of states apply the ABC test for the SUTA exclusion, and we saw this before. This is basically saying, are they independent contractors? Because again, if they're independent contractors, the employer doesn't have to pay SUTA because they're not an employer. They're just hired these independent contractors. So, what constitutes an independent contractor? There's a list of criteria, but the three that make up the ABC test is the worker free from control or direction, meaning can the worker plan and do their own schedule? They don't have to show up at the same place, and they're deciding where they want to be, what days they want to be. Also, is work performed outside the usual course of business, then it's done by an independent contractor. And is the person that's performing the services customarily engaged in an independent trade or business? So they have their own company. They're showing up, they're working on your computer, they're doing your plumbing, whatever, but they're not employed by you. So that's how you can determine if they're independent contractors. It's a short kind of version of the test. So interstate employees in SUTA. Lots of employees might work in more than one state, and so the question is, which state is the employer, in which state does the employer have to pay SUTA? Because they're not all the same rules and rates. So you apply these tests in the following order. So first one is, where is the work localized? Meaning, where is the work primarily performed? So this is the most compelling criterion, which says most states will look and say, if the work is performed primarily in this state, then you have to pay in this state. Okay, now maybe you're all over the place. There's not a primary state. So then you look at, where's the operational base located for the company? Like, where does management go to work? Like corporate offices, where are the business records kept? Then whatever state that is, that's the state that's going to pay the SUTA. That's the state to whom the SUTA is going to be paid. The next one, maybe there's no operational base, or it's in several states. Then where are the operations directed? There's some state where the control is existing about who's going to do what, and so then you look at that. Now, if there's none of these are clearly distinguishable, then it's where the employee lives. But that's the last criterion. There are reciprocal agreements that states will make with each other. So if the factors from the prior slides still don't give an appropriate answer, then you look to the interstate reciprocal arrangements that may or may not be present, but the state can enter into an arrangement in which the employer elects coverage of the employee in one state. And this is a benefit to the employer, because the employer can choose the state in which all of the services of interstate workers are to be covered, and they can pick the state that has the best, the highest or the lowest wage base and the lowest contribution rate. That's what they're going to be looking for. So again, this is something that the employer would go to the state and make arrangements to do that with them.